Coco is a little girl who lives in a world with magic and witches. But unlike in the 1800s, witches are now praised for the miracles they can do. That's why Coco wants to be a witch when she grows up. One day, while Coco is hanging up laundry to dry, she sees a Pegasus carriage flying through the air and landing near her house. She runs downstairs to ask her mom if she can go see it because this is the first time she has ever seen one land so close to her. But when she opens the front door, she bumps into a man who is standing there. She says she's sorry, but he says it's okay because he was the one who stood in front of the door in the first place. Coco looks up and sees a group of women looking through the store's fabric collection. She thinks they must be the same women who came in the carriage a moment ago. She looks at the man again, but he already knows what she's going to ask, so he makes it clear that he's not part of their group. The women are amazed by the wide range of fabrics available here. It's even better than what they usually find in the castle town, so they plan to buy a lot at once, which keeps Coco's mother very busy. She asks Coco for a little help, and Coco is more than happy to give it. But first, she asks her mom if she can go outside and see the Pegasus carriage when she's done. Her mom doesn't like the idea of Coco messing with a Pegasus that belonged to her customers, but she agrees to let her go as long as she helps out first. Coco is happy to hear that and runs over to the man to get his order. She says she's sorry for the wait and asks him what he needs. He says he wants a smoky white cloth and has already written down the exact measurements he needs. All Coco has to do now is cut it out for him. Coco goes to find the right color of fabric for the man. After she gets it, she uses chalk to mark the measurements and starts cutting. But when she's done, she sees the man staring at her work, which surprises her. He says that craftsmanship as good as this feels like magic to him. Coco won't accept the compliment though, because she thinks magic is so much better than anything she could do with her regular hands. She doesn't think it's fair to compare magic to something as average as her work. The man can tell that Coco really likes magic, so he asks her why she is so interested in it. Coco tells him that when she was little, she went to a festival at the castle and met a witch who was wearing a mask. The witch called her over and asked if she wanted to buy a magic picture book from him. Coco loved picture books, but at the time, she didn't know what magic was. The witch then made some shadowy figures appear to show how amazing magic is. He even made the cobblestones under Coco's feet come to life, which made Coco believe that magic was the best thing in the world. She couldn't wait to buy the book and ran back to her mom to tell her all about it. Coco's mom thinks that Coco fell for some kind of scam, but as long as she's happy, that's all that matters. Coco tells her mom that she wants to be a witch when she grows up, but her mom tells her that it's not possible. Coco is sad to hear that and asks why. Her mom tells her that only people who are born with magical powers can become witches, so regular people like them can't become witches. Coco's dream of becoming a witch was shattered that day, but she still loves watching magic, even though she knows she will never be able to do it herself. The man is curious, so he asks Coco if she can tell him more about the witch she met. But just then, they all hear a loud crash coming from the direction of the Pegasus carriage, and Coco is scared that something bad might have happened to it. She runs outside to see for herself, and sure enough, the Pegasus carriage has been turned over in some way, and these two are to blame. Coco's friends saw the carriage outside and went to look at it. While they were doing so, one of the boys accidentally hit his head on the bottom of the carriage, breaking the magic disc that made it fly in the first place. Coco's mom grabs the boys and makes them say sorry to the ladies for what happened. The ladies are still upset though, because they can't get home without the carriage, which was a gift from their father. Coco's mom doesn't know what to do because she can't afford to buy a new one. But then, after looking at the carriage, the man says he thinks he can fix it. At first, the ladies don't believe him because this carriage was made by a witch with flying magic, so there's no way some random guy could fix it. But then the man says his name is Kifri and that he is a witch. The women are all very happy to learn that Kifri is a witch, especially Coco. They all thank him for his help, but Kifri does say that there is a small issue. He says he doesn't want to do the magic in public, so he asks if there's a private place he could go instead. Coco immediately offers him the workshop in the house. This could be her only chance to see a witch cast a spell in person, but that plan doesn't work out for her because as soon as Kifri gets to the workshop, he tells Coco to stand outside and watch and not let anyone in. That really messes up her plan to learn magic from Kifri because he clearly doesn't want anyone to see him, but rules like that only work on people who are willing to listen. Coco's friends might as well be deaf in that regard because they immediately try to sneak around the house and onto the roof to watch Kifri cast spells. Coco follows them and tries to get them to come down, but then she remembers that she wants to see the magic too, so she climbs up on the roof and asks the boys to move over. They then open the window, hoping to get a great view of the magical process, but Kifri is very careful and closes all the curtains before he starts. There's no way they can open them without him noticing, so they all give up and go back down. Coco is also about to leave, But she remembers that she left the roof hatch open when she was hanging up the laundry to dry, so she climbs up on the roof and goes into the house through the hatch. She then looks through a crack in the wall boards into the workshop and can now clearly see what Kifri is doing. She had always thought that spells were cast with words or actions, but from what she can see, Kifri is just drawing on the disc. That means that the stick she got with the magic book years ago wasn't a wand, it was a pen. And if all she needs to do to use magic is learn how to draw the spells, then maybe she can still become a witch. Finally, Kifri finishes drawing the spell, and Coco panics because if he goes outside and doesn't see her by the door, he will know she was watching him. Kifri does go to talk to Coco, but when he gets there, Coco has already come back. She's very dirty and out of breath from all the running she had to do. After that, Kifri puts the magic disc back in the carriage so that the noble ladies can leave and go home without any problems. Later, Kifri leaves too, and Coco and her mum wave goodbye as he walks away. Coco's mum is really relieved because she thought Coco would say she wanted to leave with Kifri, and she wouldn't know what to do with herself if Coco left her behind. Coco hugs her mom and tells her not to worry because she would never leave her. Her mom is very happy to hear this, so she suggests they go back inside and start dinner. Coco and her mom have a nice meal together, and then Coco goes to bed after washing up. But she doesn't really plan to sleep tonight. She puts her candle on her nightstand and takes out the wand that came with her magic book. She knows it's a pen now, and she sees that one end has a cap and the other end has an orb that holds the pen's ink. Coco also thinks that all the pictures and diagrams in the book are the ones she needs to cast spells, so she decides to practice copying some of them down on a piece of paper. She spends a few minutes looking at the different parts of the first spell before carefully tracing it onto a different piece of paper. She makes sure that all of her lines are straight. She finally finishes the first drawing and waits a moment to see if anything happens. Nope, it's still just a piece of paper. Coco doesn't know what she did wrong because she thinks it looks close enough to the picture in the book. But she may be good at drawing straight lines, she is clearly not good at drawing circles because that circle isn't connected at all. Just as she is about to give up, a drop of ink falls from the pen and connects the lines of the circle. As soon as the circle is done, the page lights up right in front of Coco's eyes, filling the room with bright and colorful fireworks. This is a big step forward for Coco because the fact that she was able to draw a spell means she could become a witch. But she can't tell anyone about what she found out because Kifri seemed to really not want anyone to see him cast his spell. If he finds out that she saw him, he might be angry. Coco decides to keep practicing with more magic circles for now. Kifri is camping in the woods with a fire spell to keep warm. He can't help but remember what Coco said about a random witch selling her a picture book. A moment later he sits up in shock because he finally understands what that picture book was. A few hours have passed since Coco got back to her room. She has just found the fire spell, but having a fire inside is very dangerous, so she rushes to put it out before something bad happens. Coco is finally starting to get how the magic circles work after doing a few tests. The effect will be stronger the bigger the circle is, and it will last longer if the circle is drawn perfectly. That being said, it's hard for her to keep the drawing neat while making it bigger, especially with the more complicated ones. She'll probably need a lot of practice before she gets as good as Kifri. At that moment, Coco has the brilliant idea to trace the magic circle right from the book to make it easier to draw. And sure enough, this works, and she perfectly copies one of the book's most difficult spells. Kifri shows up behind her just as she finishes tracing the spell and it starts to glow. He yells in her face, asking what spell she just used, and then pulls her out the window. Coco says she doesn't know because she was just copying a new one from the book. But as they look back at the house, it is slowly being covered in a thick layer of crystals. Coco's mom heard all the noise and came outside to see what was going on. She couldn't see the crystal forming behind her in time, and before she could get away, her foot hit it, and just like that, Coco's mom was caught. Coco is horrified as the spell she cast covers her mother. She tries to get down to help her, but Kifri holds her back and tells her that it's too late because that spell was forbidden and nothing can be done now. Before Kifri can finish talking, Coco kicks her way out of his grip and starts to fall to her death. Kifri runs down to catch her before she gets hurt. Coco then tries to save her mom, but the spell keeps spreading and her whole body is already trapped in the crystal. If she stays there, she will be caught up in it too. Kifri grabs Coco and flies away to make sure that doesn't happen. Coco starts to cry and says she's sorry because she didn't know the spell would do all of this. Kifri doesn't blame her because it's normal for her not to know how dangerous the spell was. That's why witches aren't allowed to tell the public about magic, to keep things like this from happening. All you really need to cast magic is special ink and a magic circle pattern. But now that Coco knows about it, he has to erase her memory. Coco begs him not to wipe her mind after hearing what he just said. If he does, she will forget about her mother and all the pages of the picture book she memorized. If that happens, no one will be able to save her mother. Kifri knows what she's going through, but the memory wipe is needed to make sure this doesn't happen again. But then he remembers that the picture book Coco talked about is also sealed in the crystal, and without it, he won't have any clues to help him find the witch. Coco might have the best chance of finding him because she knows the book by heart. Coco wants to know if finding the witch will let them break the crystal spell and save her mother. Kifri says there is a chance, so Coco begs him to let her help because she will do anything to save her mom. Kifri then tells her that she will have to go through training to become a real witch if she wants to keep her memories of the secrets of magic. The next morning, Kifri takes Coco back to his studio and tells her not to worry about her mom because he put up a barrier around the area to keep people out. No one else will be affected by the spell, and Coco's mom will be safe in case they can find a way to fix the damage. Coco starts to cry because she knows this is all her fault. Kifri comforts her and tells her that she had no way of knowing that the spell was dangerous in the first place. He takes her into the studio and picks up a tool that makes a big ball of water. He tells Coco she can wash up with this while he goes to get her some new clothes. Coco doesn't really know how to use this thing, and after what happened, she's scared to touch magic that she doesn't understand. At that moment, a girl named Tesha comes around the corner and tells Coco not to worry because that spell isn't very dangerous. She says that it is called a vapor bubble and that it works by pulling water out of the air to make a ball of water. She also shows how to use it by tipping it over and letting some water flow out. Coco is very thankful for the explanation and thanks Tesha. Tesha, on the other hand, is even more thankful to Coco because she doesn't get to explain magic tools to others very often, so this was fun for her. At that moment, a girl named Rikha walks over with a quill and ink in hand. Coco knows that these are the tools for casting spells, so she asks Rikha and Tesha if they are witches. Tesha says that they are just apprentices learning from Master Kifri, but now that she thinks about it, she wonders who Coco is supposed to be. She asks if she's an apprentice too, but Coco thinks it's too soon to say that, since she didn't know what magic was until yesterday. Tesha and Rikha stop talking when they hear this because they now know that Coco is the girl they heard about in the rumor. Coco doesn't get what they're talking about, so she asks what rumor they're talking about. They explain that the rumor says an outsider used forbidden magic and was then allowed to become an apprentice, which is something that has never happened before. At that moment, Kifri comes back with a new outfit for Coco. He is happy to see that the kids are mostly getting along, but he tells Tesha and Rikha to hurry up and finish their morning chores. He tells Coco to put on the uniform he made for her because that's what all of his students wear. He promises to explain everything to her after she's done with that. After Coco gets dressed, Kifri sits her down and gets ready to teach her about the history of magic. He starts by telling her that magic wasn't always a secret. People used to know that anyone could use it whenever they wanted, but unfortunately, even though they had a lot of power, they didn't have a lot of responsibility, so the world fell into chaos and wars broke out with forbidden magic. That's why a group of peaceful witches came together to take away people's memories of magic so that another tragedy wouldn't happen. That's also why all witches need to be very careful to keep the secret. Coco now knows why Kifri didn't want anyone to see him cast his spell while he was fixing the carriage, but she still doesn't know what forbidden magic means. Kifri says that it is magic that was made during the age of war to hurt other people, like the spell that turned Coco's mother to stone. Coco holds on to Kifri and begs him to teach her about forbidden magic because she needs to know it in order to free her mother. Kifri usually tells his students to be patient and wait for more information to come out, but he doesn't think that would be right for Coco, so he tells her to follow him instead because he has something to show her. He could just list a lot of forbidden spells for her, but the main rule is that no spell can be cast directly on a human body. That's why modern witches always use some kind of tool to cast their spells. Kifri has a teleportation window in the basement, and to show how it works, he lines up the runes on the circles until the scene changes to a lake. Coco can't believe it because she's never seen anything like it before. Kifri says that the portal just connects two windows that are already there in the world, as long as they have the same pattern. This place is very special because the building over there in the distance is the Tower of Tomes. He says that every time someone writes a book about magic, a copy of it shows up there right away. This means that the tower has every spell that has ever been written down, even the ones that are illegal. Coco wants to know everything she can about that spell, so she asks Kifri to take her there. But Kifri says it doesn't work that way because the tower is guarded by those monsters over there and 3 others. You can't get past them unless you've finished your witch trials. So, Coco will have to study a lot if she wants to visit. After that, Kifri shows Coco where she will be living from now on. While he's there, he wants to introduce her to her new flatmate, but sadly, Agat isn't home right now. Kifri takes Coco inside and tells her that she and Agat will have to share one workspace, but they each have their own bedroom. He tells Coco to take a break because she has had a long day, and if she needs anything, she can call him anytime. He calls his bosses to let them know how things are going with Coco as he leaves. He thanks them for letting her be an apprentice, and says she is settling in well. He hasn't asked for information about the witch who gave her the book yet, though, because he wants to wait until Coco is used to her new life here. Coco is busy exploring her new room, and she's really excited because she never thought she'd get to see what a real witch's room looks like. But just as she's about to start touching things, she hears a voice telling her to stay on her side of the desk. Coco is shocked because she doesn't know where that came from, but when she looks up, she sees a girl floating above her. Agathe is Coco's new flatmate starting today. Agathe already knows a lot about Coco because she is the famous outsider who is going to be an apprentice today. Agathe tells Coco how sorry she is for what happened to her mother, but she also makes it clear that she thinks it was Coco's fault in the first place. Coco knows she caused the accident, which is why she wants to become a witch to fix it. But Agathe is annoyed when Coco says she wants to become a witch so casually because being a witch is not easy. You have to draw spells for hours and hours every day just to pass the test and become a mage. Agathe doesn't think Coco, who is from outside the area, has what it takes to be a witch. Coco says she doesn't know if she'll be a good witch or not, but she's going to try. Agathe tells her that she will have to prove herself then. Tesha and Rick have come to get Coco for dinner, and she says training will start tomorrow. A little later, everyone sits down to eat at the dinner table, but Agathe says she won't be joining them. Instead, she's eating in her room right now. Kifri doesn't want to make her come out, but he does want Agathe to spend more time with the rest of them. He tells them to eat quickly before the food gets cold, so Coco takes a bite of the bread and is surprised by how soft and tasty it is. Tesha says that Kifri makes all the food they eat, and that he's a great cook, so they eat great meals like this every day. Coco goes to bed later that night as a witch apprentice. This is a dream come true for her, but she can't be happy about it because she lost her mother. Coco wakes up very early the next day to start studying for the trials, but that's going to be hard since she doesn't even know what the trials are yet. Kifri shows up behind Coco and tells her that she can't learn everything about magic by reading a book. Instead, she should learn by doing things in the real world. And that's why he gave her the basic spellcasting kit that every young witch needs. Coco is a little scared to try using magic again because she's afraid something will go wrong like it did last time. But she needs to get over it because she can't save her mother unless she learns how to use magic. So she asks Kifri to start teaching her because she's ready to learn. After 5 textbooks, Coco is officially done with learning. She's trying to get through it, but she didn't know that studying magic would be this boring. Kifri thinks they should take a short break for now, so he asks Coco to summarize everything he has taught her up to this point. Coco agrees, so she starts by saying that a spell has 3 parts: the sigil in the middle, which tells you what kind of spell it is, the signs, which tell you which way and how strong the spell is, and the outer circle, which turns on the spell. Coco had also memorized a lot of complicated rules and exceptions, but now that she knows the basics, it's time for her to practice casting spells. Kifri stands behind her the whole time, cheering her on, but when Coco is done, she's too embarrassed to show him, so she tries to throw it away. Kifri stops her and takes the page out of her hand to look at it. Coco doesn't want him to see it, though, because the lines are all wobbly and messy. Kifri says he already knew she would do that, and that it's okay because she's still learning and needs to be able to make mistakes in order to learn. Kifri then points out a place on Coco's magic circle where she didn't connect the ends of the circle. He says that drawing a perfect circle will make the spell work better, but the most important thing is to make sure that the circle is completely closed. If it isn't, the spell won't work. He tells her to try to connect the lines, and she does. A second later, a water jet spell goes off, hitting Agathe in the back from across the room. Coco starts to apologize right away because she didn't mean to do that, but Agathe says it's fine because it doesn't bother her. She even takes the time to say that Coco made one of her signs longer than the others, which is why her spell went in that direction. Kifri thanks Agathe for her comment, and is sure he made the right choice by leaving her in charge of Coco. He then heads for the door, and says he will be at the tower for a while because he needs to check on something. Agathe tells Coco that it's time for her to prove herself now that he's gone. She won't give Coco any breaks like Kifri did. Kifri has just gotten to the Tower of Tomes, so he goes down to the first lair. But as soon as he lands, someone behind him pulls him down. It turns out to be Elira, one of his old friends, playing a prank on him. Kifri is happy to see her again after a long time. She says she heard all about his new little apprentice. She asks if he thinks she will be able to lead them to the brimmed caps, since it has been over 4 years since anyone has used forbidden magic. Kifri says that wasn't the only reason he chose Coco as an apprentice. In fact, Coco isn't even officially his apprentice yet because she hasn't finished her first test. The tests are held at the Dada range, and this time of year, the elevation there is at its highest point. Kifri says that this would be way too dangerous for a new apprentice because she could get herself killed. Meanwhile, Agathe has just set up the portal in the Atelier so that Coco can practice on the Dada range. Coco is a little hesitant because this doesn't seem like the right thing to do while Kifri is away, but Agat tells her to stop being a baby. If she wants to be an apprentice, she will have to take this test eventually, and Agat did it when she was only 10 years old. The first test is called Consent of the Crown. Coco will be given 3 things to use to get to the top of the range and pick one of the flowers there all by herself. Agat gives her a magic guidance orb to help her get to the top and a vapor bubble to drink water from. Since Coco is new to this, those are probably the only things she knows how to use. Coco is about to take her test, but before she does, she asks if she can have a pair of shoes like Agat's. She is technically allowed to bring one more thing, so she was hoping to get to fly like Kifri and Agat did. She says she's sorry if that's too much to ask for as a new person. Usually, it takes a long time to earn a pair of shoes like that, but Agat agrees and lets Coco borrow her own shoes. But that's the only nice thing she's going to do for Coco. She pushes her through the portal, and just before it closes, she tells Coco that if she fails this test, she will be automatically disqualified as an apprentice and have to leave the atelier for good. Coco is scared because she is alone in a strange forest, but she knows she has to do her best to pass this test, so she gets up and gets ready to go through it. It looks like the guidance orb works by showing her where to go, so Coco starts to follow it, but it's hard to walk through a forest alone. She finally makes it out into the plains, but what she sees shocks her. Big pieces of land are floating in the air, and the guidance orb is pointing up into the sky. She sits down on one of the logs and thinks about what to do next. She didn't know that her destination would be floating hundreds of meters in the air, and she doesn't know how to get up there. But then she remembers that she borrowed a god's flying shoes, which are perfect for this situation. She jumps up and gets ready to leave, but then she remembers that she doesn't know how to use the shoes. She stops again to look at the shoes, and from what she can see, each one has half of a casting seal on it. She thinks that if she joins them, the seal will work. She decides to put her theory to the test, and as soon as she puts her feet together, she leaves the ground and floats in the air. She is so happy that she finally learned how to fly, but she doesn't know how to use the shoes, so she decides to take a break. But all that excitement makes her lose focus, and a few seconds later, she falls and crashes into some bushes nearby. In the Great Hall, Kifri has just asked for a few things. While he waits for his request to be processed, Elira tells him that he wouldn't have to ask for things every time if he just lived there like she and the others do. It has everything a mage could ever want, but Kifri hates the Great Hall so much that he won't stay here any longer than he has to, no matter what she says. Elira agrees to drop the subject. Since he's going home, she tells him to keep an eye on his apprentices because kids that age can get into all kinds of trouble if they're left alone. In the meantime, Coco is still trying to learn how to fly. So far, she's gotten the hang of floating slowly off the ground, so she decides to go a little higher. But when she tries to land on one of the floating rocks, she loses her balance and falls. Coco is freaking out because a fall from this height would definitely kill her. She tries to steady herself, but just before she falls to her death, she grabs onto a hanging vine to save herself. When she sees this white worm thing crawling over her face, she freaks out and falls into the water below. When Coco gets to dry land, she tries to clean Agat's shoes because they are covered in mud, but she sees that one of the flight spells on the soul is missing, which means she must have accidentally wiped it off, and now she's starting to panic. She remembers that she still has her quill and ink, so she can just draw the spells back on the shoes. But when she looks in her bag, she's horrified to find that her ink is ruined too, so now she has no other choice. Tesha goes back to the studio and asks Agat if she has seen Coco anywhere. It's almost dinner time. Agat casually tells her that Coco is at the to finish her test, and Tesha is shocked to hear this because Coco just got here yesterday and isn't ready for that kind of test. Agat, on the other hand, reminds her that the others had to take that test before they could join the atelier. She doesn't think it's fair that Coco gets to train with her without working as hard as she did, especially since she's not a part of the group. Tesha still doesn't think it's fair to put Coco's life in danger just because she's mad at her, but Agat says it's not a big deal. The data planes are at their best right now, so even with the flying shoes she borrowed, Coco will never be able to reach the top. She thinks Coco will give up soon when she realizes it's impossible and go back to the atelier, but she really underestimated how determined Coco can be. Right now, she's sailing across the water in a boat she found, and she looks like she has a plan. Tesha is very worried about Coco, but Rickhead doesn't seem too upset about what happened. It's not that she doesn't care about Coco, it's just that there's nothing they can do until Kifri gets back. Coco is still out in the boat, trying to get back up on one of the floating rocks, but no matter how hard she tries, she can't get there. She also tried to draw the flight seals back onto the shoes with what was left of the ink, but that didn't work because the shoes were wet and the ink kept smudging off. At that moment, Coco thinks about drawing the spells directly on her feet, but just as she is about to try, she remembers that Kifri said it is against the rules to draw spells on a person. She doesn't know what will happen if she tries, so she decides not to do it. She does, however, have no idea how she's going to reach her goal, which makes her think that Agat was right when he said she wasn't good enough to be a witch. Coco could never hope to compete with them because they have all been drawing spells since they were little kids and she has never had any training like that. Just as Coco is about to do something, she remembers how her mother used to teach her how to measure fabric with chalk. She never thought much of it, but Kifri complimented her on her skills back then, so she might still be able to make this work. She goes into the woods to look for rocks. After tying a piece of cloth around one, she dips the end in some of the magic ink. Then she takes her cape and starts drawing on it with the same care she would use to measure fabric. After drawing all night, Coco finally makes a sigil that should work, even though it's not the best. Just as she's about to try it out, the white worm thing from yesterday wakes up. It has gotten really close to Coco after spending the night with her, so she decides to take it with her. All she has to do now is finish the casting ring. As soon as she does, a strong wind starts to blow through the sails, but it doesn't have the effect Coco wanted. Instead of going up, the boat starts to glide over the water at high speeds. The boat is going so fast that the hull cracks, leaving Coco hanging on for dear life from the sail. Luckily, she is able to steady herself, and even though she didn't plan it, she is technically flying, so a win is a win. Now, all she has to do is get to the top. To do this, she tilts the glider up to gain height, and when she sees the flowers, she reaches out to grab one. She has to try a few times because she keeps missing the mark and almost crashes a few times, but she finally gets it right. Meanwhile, back at the Atelier, Kifri has just gotten back and is horrified to learn that Coco was sent to Darda for the test even though she isn't ready. Once the test starts, people aren't allowed to interfere. But Coco shouldn't have taken the test so soon because she hasn't been around magic her whole life like other apprentice witches. He opens the portal and gets ready to go save her, but at that moment, Coco is already on her way back with the flower. Everyone is shocked that Coco is okay and passed the test, especially Agat, who thought she would fail miserably. Coco walks right up to Agat and shows her the flower. Agat still thinks that Coco is just trying to help her learn faster. But when Coco does so well after only one day of knowing about magic, especially since Agat set her up to fail on purpose, Agat feels like a huge loser and walks away without saying anything. Kifri would deal with that later, but for now, he goes up to Coco and tells her that it is very dangerous to try magic challenges before you are fully ready, especially ones like this one where she could have easily died if she failed. He tells her to promise never to do something foolish like that again, and Coco says she's sorry, but he's not really that upset about it. He says it wasn't necessary because he had already decided to take Coco on as his apprentice without the test. To celebrate, he gives her the apprentice uniform he ordered, and Coco is very happy. But then her stomach starts growling because she hasn't eaten since yesterday, so Tesha takes her upstairs to have breakfast. Kifri has Coco practice working with the four main sigils: water, earth, fire, and levitation. This is because Coco is now an official apprentice. Coco accidentally connects the circle a little too early while she is practicing, which makes the fireball go out of control. Coco starts to panic because she doesn't know what to do. Luckily, Tesha saves her by pouring water on the fire, and Coco is thankful for her help. Tesha asks Coco what she was working on in the first place now that the danger is over. Coco says she wants to be able to draw a perfect levitation circle, so she was practicing by drawing fire sigils first, but it didn't go so well. Kifri comes over to give Coco a blanket to dry off. He tells her to be extra careful when working with fire sigils because they are formless, and can be hard to predict if mistakes are made. Coco promises to be more careful in the future. Tesha doesn't really get why Coco is still trying to draw levitation sigils. She pretty much mastered it when she was out in the Dada range. That may be true, but she also ruined Agat's flight shoes out there. She was able to clean them up, but she hasn't been able to draw the flight magic circle back on them yet because her lines are still all wobbly. She can't give them back to Agat until she fixes them. After hearing that, Kifri starts to think that the pen he gave Coco might be the reason her lines are shaky. He just picked one from his collection at random for her, so she might be able to draw spells more easily if she picks out the pen herself. Because of that, he wants to take her to the magic stationery store. Later, Kifri takes Coco and the other girls to Kaun, the closest witch town to their workshop. When they get there, Coco is amazed by how many witches are there. Kifri says that witches built the city to keep the giant mole worms that lived nearby from getting in. As the city grew, more and more witches came to live there, making it the witch town that they see today. That's an interesting story, but Coco isn't paying attention at all because she's still too mesmerized by the witches around her. Agat is still really upset that Coco passed the test, so she doesn't want to be around her right now and tells Kifri that she wants to go off on her own. Kifri tells her to go and meet them at the magic stationery store. After she leaves, he asks Coco how things have been going with Agat lately, because it doesn't look good. Coco doesn't know why Agat is so mean to her, but she still wants them to be friends one day. After that, Kifri starts to lead the group to the magic stationery store. However, Coco keeps getting distracted by all the creative ways that magic is being used here, and she starts to fall behind. So Tesha gets her attention and tells her to stay with the group because they don't want to spend half the day looking for her if she gets lost. Coco tries to stay focused, but she can't help but look at a dark alleyway. It reminds her of the alley where she got that magic picture book, but just then, Tesha calls out to her again and tells her to hurry up so they don't get lost. When they finally get to the stationery store, Coco is amazed to see a huge tree growing in the middle of the store. She has never seen anything like it before. The shop owner is surprised by Coco's reaction because he has never seen an apprentice be so amazed by something as simple as silverwood. However, Kifri tells him that he needs to give Coco a break because she is still new to all of this. The man realizes that Coco is the girl from the rumors. She just became an apprentice even though she's not from the area, so it makes sense that she doesn't know about silverwood. Coco doesn't know who this man is or what to call him, so she doesn't know what to say. Tesha tells her that his name is Nalnoa and that he owns this store. Nalnoa then says that he and his grandson made all of the things that are sold in this store. He can even get ink at different levels of concentration if he needs to. Coco is still very confused because she didn't even know the ink needed to be taken out in the first place. Nalnoa offers to show her how to do it. Coco eagerly follows Nalnoa up the stairs, but on the way up, she sees Nalnoa's grandson, Tarda, carving a pen. She is amazed at how focused he looks while he works, but she quickly shakes it off and keeps going up the stairs. Nalnoa goes to the top floor and takes a dying branch from the silverwood tree. She puts it in a beaker to start the extraction process. After a short time, the water turns jet black. Nalnoa says that silverwood is usually a pure silver color when it's healthy and alive, but it quickly turns black when it dies. In this state, it is poisonous to both people and the tree itself. But when you boil dead branches like these, they give off a liquid called crude. If you take out the extra water from the liquid, you get a nice, concentrated beaker full of conjuring ink. Kifri then tells Coco that conjuring ink and regular ink are not the same thing. The soot that comes from burning wood is what makes regular ink. Conjuring ink, on the other hand, is much stronger because it comes from the silverwood tree's crude, which is like its lifeblood. Because of this, the silverwood tree species is very important to all witches because they use it to make wands and ink. Coco gets excited when Nalnoa talks about wands, and Nalnoa asks if that's why they came here today. Coco says she came to get a new wand, so Nalnoa pours some ink from a small bottle and tells Coco to try a few out and see which one she likes best. The girls then go around the store to look for a wand for Coco. But just as she's about to start looking, she sees the masked witch who sold her the magic picture book standing outside the window. As soon as she sees who he is, the witch runs away. She chases after him, hoping to learn the name of the spell that turned her mother into a crystal. The other girls try to stop Coco from running away, but it's too late for that. They don't have time to go get Kifri because if Coco gets too far into the city on her own, they might not be able to find her. Agat is out shopping in the city when Coco runs into her by accident, but she doesn't stop and keeps chasing the masked witch. A little while later, the other girls show up and tell Agat that they need to go after Coco right away. Tesha pulls Agat along, and even though Agat doesn't know what's going on, she decides to go along with it. Coco keeps chasing the man through the back alleys of the city, which are full of twists and turns. The girls are doing their best to keep up with her. Coco's pet is with her, but all of a sudden it sees a thick fog coming in and stops. The girls keep going, and the next thing you know, they're all gone. Agat finally catches up to Coco and grabs her arm. She wants to know why she's running. Coco says she's chasing the man who gave her the book with forbidden magic in it. She tries to show Agat where he is, but when she turns around, he's already gone. Agat thinks this has all been a huge waste of time, but when they turn to leave, Rickhen notices that this place looks very different from the usual city streets. The floors and walls are also made of a white rock that isn't found in Kaln, so they must not be in Kaln anymore. Tesha doesn't get how that could be possible because she's sure they didn't go through a teleportation gate to get here, and there's no way they could have been teleported out of the city right away. Tesha thinks this must just be a part of the city they've never seen before, so she says she's going to fly up to get a bird's eye view and figure out where they are. But Agat doesn't think that's going to help because she's sure that this place isn't calm, and if they were really teleported here directly, then forbidden magic must have been used. Tesha comes back down at that moment, screaming that everyone needs to leave right now. Agat asks her to tell them what she saw, but Tesha says the problem isn't what she saw, it's that it saw her, and is coming here right now. The rogue witch is watching the group from the top of a wall. He didn't really want to bring anyone else besides Coco here, but he's going to do what he planned and give Coco a proper welcome to the world of magic. A big dragon lands right in front of the girls a moment later. At the same time, the bad witch says that Coco is his only hope. Back in the city, Kifri has finally finished his shopping, so he asks Nulnoa if he knows where the girls are. Nulnoa says he doesn't know because he hasn't seen them in a while. He thinks they might have gotten bored and gone for a walk, but Kifri doesn't think that's possible. There is no way the girls would leave the store without saying goodbye to Nulnoa first because they are all so polite. Kifri is starting to feel like something is very wrong here. Tarta comes up to them and says that he saw the girls leave the store chasing after a man in strange clothes who was covering his face with a picture of an eye. As soon as Kifri hears that, he knows it was the rogue witch, and he is really worried that something bad might have happened to the girls. The dragon is staring at the girls in the middle of nowhere, and they are all frozen in fear. But Agat snaps them out of it, and tells them that the only way to get out of this is to keep looking the dragon in the eye and slowly back away until they are out of its attack range. They all slowly back away, just as Agat told them to. When they are far enough away, they all turn and run as fast as they can, just missing the dragon's bite. Then the dragon starts to chase them, and it's getting closer, but Agat casts a fire spell to slow it down. While the dragon is confused, the group gets away into the maze. Coco tells Agat that what she just did was amazing and asks how she drew that spell so quickly while they are running. Agat says she didn't draw it back there at all. She keeps a notebook with spells that are only partially drawn, so all she has to do to use them is connect the circle. Coco loves the idea and asks Agat to teach her later, but first they have to stay alive and get out of here. Sadly, they quickly reach a dead end. The dragon may not know where they are yet, but if they can't find a way out of here, it won't be long before it does. Tesha starts to panic because she doesn't want to die here, and she can't believe Coco got her into this mess, but she doesn't want Coco to feel bad, so she stops herself from saying that last part out loud. Coco, on the other hand, gets the message loud and clear. She can't even say anything about it because it's all her fault. Agat calms Tesha down and says they can still get out of here. She just needs to cast a spell to break through the wall, but it will take some time, so she asks Tesha to make a distraction to give her some time to draw the spell. Tesha gets it, so she quickly draws a levitation spell and puts it in her dungarees to make them float. When she lets them go, the dragon starts to chase them, which should give them a lot of time. Coco happens to see a magic circle on the ceiling when she looks up, so she goes over to Agat and taps her on the shoulder to show her. This makes Agat mess up her magic circle, and she's really mad that Coco got in the way. She screams at her and says, "You should never touch a witch while she is casting a spell." Coco says she's sorry and that she didn't mean to do it, but that's not good enough for Agat. Coco also didn't mean to turn her mother into stone, but that woman is still stuck in stone right now. She tells Coco to be quiet and do nothing because saying sorry doesn't fix mistakes. Agat doesn't have time to start over, so she's worried that they'll have to find another way through the maze. Luckily, Rickhe was also drawing the same spell and just finished, so she blows a hole through the wall. But right now, Coco feels completely useless. Back in the city, Kifri and the others have been looking everywhere for Coco and the girls, but they can't find them. They don't have many clues to go on because Tarta only saw them for a second as they ran by. But then Coco's pet comes up to Kifri, and he remembers that it was with Coco when she went missing. He asks it if it can lead him to them, and the brush buddy starts running in the direction of where it last saw the girls. Kifri follows closely behind, praying that the girls are still safe. The dragon has figured out that Tesha is trying to distract it, so it is back to chasing the girls. Unfortunately, they haven't gotten very far in their escape because they are back where they started. They don't have many other choices right now because the dragon might find them if they keep running. Agat suggests that they find a place to hide for a while. They all end up under a flyover, and Tesha is freaking out because she thinks she might die in there. Coco tries to cheer her up, but when you're being hunted by a dragon, there's not much to look forward to, so Coco gives Tesha her cloak as the next best thing. Coco always feels better when she wears it, even if it's not much. It reminds her that she looks like a witch on the outside, even if she's scared. That's why she wants Tesha to have it. If it helps her calm down even a little, then Coco won't have been completely useless. Tesha feels really bad when Coco says that about herself, so she casts a spell that makes a soft ball around them both. Inside, she tells Coco she's sorry for making her feel like this is all her fault. Tesha hates that she took her fear out on Coco when she's supposed to be the one protecting her because she has more experience. Coco tells her she doesn't have to apologize because it really is her fault. Coco tells Tesha that she and the others have been doing a great job of protecting her so that Tesha doesn't feel bad. She also says that this fluff ball thing is very comfortable, so she asks Tesha what spell it is. Tesha says that this is one of her own creations. She got the idea because when she was younger, she used to dream about sleeping on the clouds and wanted to make that dream come true. She knows that the spell isn't perfect yet and still needs some work, but she hopes to be able to submit it as a general use spell one day. This spell might not be the most useful one, but it's her dream, and Coco's dream is to become a witch and save her mom. Tesha says that neither of them should give up until they get what they want. At that moment, Agathe pokes her head in and says she heard everything. She tells Tesha that it's okay to chase her dreams, but if she really wants to make it feel like she's sleeping on a cloud, she needs to use something more solid, like cotton, instead of real clouds. Tesha says that would ruin the whole point because it would just be a regular mattress at that point. Agathe says that they have a more serious spell to worry about than Tesha's. It looks like there is a looping spell on this place that keeps them from leaving no matter how far they walk. If they want to get out of here, they need to do something about it. They will have to find and break that seal first, but Agathe has no idea where to start looking. Coco then says that she saw a magic seal on the roof a while ago. After everyone else looks, they all agree that this must be the seal that is keeping them trapped in here. However, they will need to find a way to get rid of the dragon first. Agathe starts to make a few more fire spells to use against the dragon, but Coco stops her because she doesn't think that's going to work. Agathe's fire spell did slow the dragon down, but it didn't hurt it much. Agathe has to agree with Coco that dragons are naturally resistant to fire. Then she asks Coco if she has any ideas for a spell they could use to beat it instead. Coco thinks fighting the dragon would be too dangerous, so she has a different plan. She draws a picture on the wall to show them her plan. She wants to use Tesha's spell to keep the dragon busy while they get to the spell seal up there. A reptile like the dragon is sure to want to go somewhere warm when it's cold outside. Agathe doesn't like that the plan is basically to try to put the dragon to sleep, but Tesha and Richie are already on board, so it is technically possible, even though it sounds dumb. Coco came up with this plan because Kifri told her that magic is meant to make everyone happy. Agathe agrees with this idea because it means that no one has to get hurt. She doesn't really have any other ideas, so Tesha and Rikha ask her for help because they know they will have a better chance of success if they work together. So, Agathe agrees to work on Coco's plan with the others, even though he doesn't want to. Coco is very happy to hear this. The first step is to make Tesha's cloud strong enough for a dragon to lie down on, but the user is going to be a dragon, so they are having trouble coming up with what to make it out of. Tesha thinks about using shredded paper, but they only have 4 small notepads with them. Coco and Rikha say they could use their clothes or hair instead. Agathe tells them that neither choice would work because it's not nearly enough for a dragon, and even if it were, would they really want to give up their hair and clothes for this? They see that Agathe is right, so they start to think of other things they could use. Finally, Agathe suggests using sand. Richie drew the wall breaker spell a long time ago. It turned the wall's materials into fine sand, which is soft when you lie down on it, so it should work. Agathe starts making a seal to make the sand as fine as possible. When she's done, she shows it to Tesha so that she can start making copies. Coco is surprised at how quickly Rikha can cast her spells, but small seals are her thing. Agathe tells Tesha to come up with a spell to gather as much sand as possible in the middle of the plaza while Rikha is busy with that. Agathe plans to work on a spell to keep everything in place. Coco calls out to her as she's leaving to start her work and asks if there's anything she can do. Agathe thinks Coco's plan is good, but her spell drawing skills aren't good enough for her to be trusted with a spell under high stakes, so to avoid accidents, Agathe tells her to stay put for now. Coco listens to Agathe and sits in a corner while the others work. After a while, though, she gets bored and picks up one of Agathe's trash spells. When she looks at it, she is amazed by how perfect Agathe's circle is. She really wants to know how Agathe does it, so she walks over slowly, staying far enough away so she doesn't mess up Agathe's spell. When she can see clearly, she sees that Agathe uses a special method to draw her circle. She first draws the circle in the air, and then she follows that line in one smooth motion. The others seem to be doing the same thing. Coco had never really thought about how she drew her circles before, so she wants to try it out and takes out her pen to practice. This might not be the best idea though, since she has already messed up so many times. Luckily, nothing goes wrong, but later in the night, none of the other people have been able to think of any good spell ideas for how to make a cushion out of the sand. A compression spell would make the sand too hard at this size, but an air seal like the one Tesha used wouldn't be strong enough to hold the dragon's weight, so they are all at a loss. At that moment, they see a light coming from that direction, and that's when they realize that Coco has just made a fireball. Agathe is a bit confused and asks Coco why she's casting a fireball right now. But Tesha and Rikha are both amazed because this is the first time one of Coco's fireball spells has stayed stable for so long. They rush over to congratulate her and ask how she did it. Coco says she saw how everyone else was drawing their circles and decided to practice her own. It took her a lot of tries before she got it right. Agathe isn't very impressed because anyone can learn how to draw a spell with enough practice. However, the word repetition gives her an idea. If they can't use just one spell to stabilize the sand pillow, maybe they can use a series of spells to do it. They spend the next few hours coordinating the spells they will use in the plan of attack, and once it's time to move, they split up into teams. Coco and Tesha go to one side of the maze, and Agathe and Rickhe go to the other. When they get to their assigned spots, they start drawing the different wall breaker spells needed to make the sand and the stabilization spell. When Coco and Tesha are done, they signal Agathe and Rickhe to let them know they are ready to finish the circles. After both sides draw the last line, the floor turns to sand and there is a huge explosion. As they run to safety, they finish the circles on the other spells they drew along the way. By the end, there is a huge cloud of sand in the middle of the maze. The plan works perfectly, and by the time the dragon sees the cloud, everyone is already far away, so they wait to see if the spell will hold. Agathe's plan was to use a spell that would keep the cloud stable by always trying to bring it back to its original state. The restoration spell will stop the change and keep the cloud's shape, even if the dragon's weight is meant to move the sand. So, the dragon bed was done, and as soon as the dragon lays down on it, it goes to sleep. They just have to sneak past the dragon and get to the casting seal before it wakes up. They finally get to the seal, but they don't know what this spell does because they've never seen anything like it before. That being said, it's definitely what's keeping them in here, so they should be able to get out once they break it. Meanwhile, in Kaun, Kifri gets to the alley where Coco and the others disappeared, but he can't find any signs of them. At that moment, Tarda catches up to him too. He is a little confused because he could have sworn that this alleyway used to have a pavement, but now it is just dirt. Kifri goes right away to check the broken pavement stones nearby after hearing him say that. Sure enough, there are casting seals on them, but as he lifts one up, it suddenly activates and pushes him and Tarda back. Tesha broke the circle on the other side, which is why the spell worked. Now the spatial seal that holds this place together is breaking down and sucking everything out. On the bright side, there is now a way out to the outside world, so they should be able to get away. But all the noise also woke up the dragon, and it is not happy. It hits the tower with its tail, knocking Agathe off. Since she doesn't have her flight shoes on right now, a fall from this height would definitely kill her if the dragon doesn't get to her first. But luckily, Kifri got there just in time to save her. After flying back up to the top, he casts a spell that makes all the water in the clouds above him into a giant water dragon, which he uses to knock it out. At the end of it all, Agathe, Tesha, and Rickhe are all safe with Kifri, but Coco is missing because the rogue witch got to her first. He tells her how happy he is that the seed he planted years ago has finally taken root, and how much he appreciates that his little test helped her become a better magic user. He is going to give her a gift of knowledge that Kifri would never teach her. When Coco wakes up, she is back in Kaun with Kifri and the others standing over her. They tell her that they found her unconscious on the stairs of the tower. Kifri asks her if the brimmed caps did anything to her, but Coco doesn't really remember what happened back there, so she can't really say. Nono arrives a few minutes later and is happy to see that the girls are all safe. However, Kifri asks Nalnoa for a favor. He tells Nalnoa to look into what kind of ink was used on the casting seals that the brimmed caps made. Nalnoa says he will figure it out, but then Kifri adds another condition and tells him not to tell the knights. Nalnoa is surprised by this because it is the job of witches to report all instances of forbidden magic. However, Kifri gives him a cold look and tells him to keep this a secret. Nalnoa is clearly more afraid of Kifri than the knights, so he agrees to stay quiet, but he has a feeling this won't end well. Life goes on as usual after everyone goes home. Coco keeps practicing her spells, but Agathe is very annoyed by how loud Coco is being. Agathe has come to respect Coco's work a little, so instead of yelling at her like she usually does, Agathe decides to leave the room and practice somewhere else. She goes out into the plains and stands on a ledge with her eyes closed to practice drawing a light spell. She does manage to activate the spell, but she's not very happy with how it turned out because the light pillar is weak and wobbly. She still has a lot of work to do before she can draw spells as easily as Kifri does. Coco is getting really frustrated with her practice because all of her lines are coming out wobbly. This is because she never got to pick out a pen for herself in Kaun. She can draw straight lines with the pigment stone because she knows a lot about fabrics, but the stone is too big for small pieces of paper. She is also upset with herself for not being able to cast a single useful spell when they got caught in the trap, but she is determined to keep trying until she learns how to use the quill. She'd like to say that, but she's too tired right now. She's about to lie down for a quick nap, but then Kifri shows up and tells her that if she sleeps out here, she'll get sick. Coco is shocked because she didn't know he was there. She tells him she didn't mean to fall asleep, but she looks tired. She tells Kifri that she's worried she won't be able to finish the Tower of Tomes test at this rate because she hasn't been making any progress lately. Kifri can tell she's very upset, so he asks her to come with him for a little while to cheer her up. Kifri takes Coco to the kitchen and shows her a pot of stew he made that he has been meaning to use. He tells Coco to take a bite. Coco tastes the stew and loves it, But then Kifri tells her he made it 2 years ago, and Coco starts to get a little scared. He tells her that the stew is safe to eat because the pot has a new spell on it that keeps the stew the same as it was when it was made. He does need to redraw the spell from time to time to make sure it stays strong. He then pulls out a bunch of carapace yams and asks Coco if she'd like to try baking one since she just learned the fireball spell. Coco is more than happy to take on the challenge. She starts drawing while Kifri cooks dinner. After a while, Coco makes a perfect fireball spell, but when she tries to put the yam on it to cook, the yam falls right into the spell and puts the fire out. She doesn't get why it didn't work, so Kifri tells her that the yams are very heavy and need a spell to keep them floating over the flame. Coco decides to give it a shot, but after she makes the changes, she realizes that she went too far with the levitation because the yam is now too far away from the fire. She tries a few different things, one of which accidentally makes a pillar of fire that burns the yam to ash. Kifri tells her to keep trying until she gets it right. Coco finally makes the perfect fireball spell. After letting the yam cook for a while, she takes it out with tongs and tells Kifri that she is done with his homework. Kifri tells her she did a great job, and it looks like Coco's mood has improved just like he hoped it would. Kifri tells her a short story about what it was like for him when he was still learning how to do magic. He learned water magic first because he didn't know how to swim and hated getting wet. He wanted to find a way to use magic to avoid having to do his own laundry. He tells Coco that being lazy can be a good reason to work on a spell if you do it right. He tells her to try to find ways to use magic in her daily life to make things easier, and after making enough spells, she will start to get the hang of it. A few minutes later, Tesha and Rick have both come into the kitchen because they can smell that Kifri is cooking and they can't wait for lunch anymore. They ask if they can help. After a few minutes and some last-minute work on Coco's fire spell, the food is finally ready. Coco suggests that they eat outside today because the weather is so nice. Kifri likes this idea because he hasn't had a picnic in a while, so he goes to get the other things they need. Coco then calls Agathe to see if she wants to join them for a picnic. Agathe says she was going to work while she ate, so she won't be able to go with them. She also says that the weather outside is really bad right now. Coco and the others didn't know it was raining, and they're sad that their picnic plans fell through. But Kifri doesn't get why they're so upset because they can use magic to fix this exact problem. After seeing this, the girls get excited again because the picnic is back on. They all leave together under Kifri's umbrella spell. Once they find a good place to lie down, they all start eating. They're all having a great time, but Coco thinks it would be even better if Agathe could join them, so she decides to call Agathe and ask him to come outside after the rain stops. When she finally gets back to the studio, though, a strange man answers the door instead of Agathe, and he looks like he's in a bad mood. Coco is scared and surprised, but luckily Kifri is right behind her, so she runs up to him. Kifri seems to know the man and says she's sorry she wasn't home to meet Aurejo. When Aurejo asks who Coco is, she says she's Kifri's apprentice, but Aurejo doesn't seem happy to hear that. He wants to know why Kifri would take on an apprentice while he was away, but Kifri says he has a good reason for everything. He tells Aurejo that Coco's case is rather special because she was a victim of forbidden magic, but the second Aurejo hears that, he cuts Kifri off and grabs Coco before walking away. When Kifri asks him what he's doing, Aurejo says he doesn't want anything to do with the brim caps. Instead, he's going to give Coco to the knights so they can deal with it. But Kifri won't let that happen, so he stops talking right away, casts a water spell that blocks Aurejo's path, and tells him to let Coco go because he doesn't want the knights to hear about any of this. He's willing to do whatever it takes to stop him. Aurejo doesn't take that threat lightly because he knows what Kifri can do, so he stops, and Kifri says they should talk about it inside. Kifri tells everyone what happened before he took Coco on as his apprentice. Since this is Coco's first time meeting him, he also tells her that Aurejo is the Atelier's watchful eye. In short, he's an inspector who goes to rural ateliers to make sure that everyone is following the rules of the Magic Society. Right now, Kifri is breaking one of the most important rules. Kifri says that if he had erased Coco's memories like he was supposed to, he would have lost all leads on the brimmed caps and what they were doing. But Aurejo reminds Kifri that it's not their job to look into the brimmed caps in the first place. The Knights Moralis are supposed to do that, and Aurejo strongly thinks that Kifri should just let them do it, but Kifri won't back down. Coco is very confused right now because she doesn't know what the Knights Moralis are. Kifri decides to give her a quick overview. The Knights Moralis are the people who decide what spells are acceptable for witches to cast. They basically keep out any magic that is thought to be illegal. People who are caught using forbidden magic are taken captive and have their memories erased to keep the secrets of forbidden magic safe. They are known for not making any exceptions, so if Coco was given to them, they would definitely erase all of her memories of it, even the good ones. Coco is scared, but Kifri tells her not to be. He knows she's a good girl, and if the Great Hall wants to erase her memories, they will have to erase his memories too. Alrejo gives in and tells Kifri that he can do whatever he wants for now, but he warns him that if anything goes wrong because of his choice, he will tell on him right away. Kifri tells the girls to wash up and get ready for bed now that everything is settled. Coco looks for her brush buddy to take him to bed after her bath, but when she does, she sees her pet run right into Alrejo's room, which scares her. She needs to get the brush buddy back, so she nervously walks up to the door and is about to knock. But then she sees a sign that says anyone who knocks will be cursed. Since Alrejo is a witch too, she takes that warning very seriously and decides to go in without knocking. She walks into the room and tries to be quiet while looking for brush buddy, but she sneezes by mistake, which makes Alrejo aware of her presence. Coco is frantically trying to apologize for coming into his room without permission, but Alrejo seems more annoyed than angry. He can tell what she was thinking when she walked in, so he tells her that the sign on the door isn't a real curse. He just wanted to keep people out of his room. He also just found the brush buddy, so he gives it back to Coco. Since Coco is still wet from her bath, Alrejo uses one of his magic rings to dry her off. Coco is surprised because she didn't know you could make rings like that. Alrejo has a lot of them with different spells on them, and he doesn't want her to catch a cold while he's watching her. He tells her to go because he wants to sleep again, but just then, Coco squeals with joy and bends down because the tiles here have glow magic in them. She tells Alrejo that this was the first spell she ever saw and that it was what made her love magic in the first place. It just so happens that Alrejo made the glow stone path. By putting one stone on top of another and stepping on it, the ring and sigil touch and activate the spell. He tells her it's not that great because anyone could do it, but Coco loves this spell the most because it was her first time with magic. Even though she couldn't use magic at the time, it still let her dream, so she is very thankful to Alrejo. Alrejo didn't think his glowstone spell could have such a big effect on someone. Seeing Coco so happy is really starting to pull at Alrejo's heartstrings, but he still thinks Coco is going to get into trouble, so he kicks her out of his room and tells her to go to bed. The next day, it is still raining, and Agathe is having trouble concentrating because of all the noise. However, she has still made some good progress with her blind spell drawing since then. At this rate, she is sure she will be able to pass her next test soon, and then she will be able to go on missions outside. At that moment, she hears a loud bang on the front door. She goes to see what's going on, and finds a scared man begging Kifri for help. He says that his son got stuck in a flood near the bridge, and that it's too dangerous for anyone else to get near him without getting swept away. Kifri agrees to help and tells the man that he will do it right away. He is about to tell the girls to stay here because it is too dangerous for them, but Agathe says she wants to go with him and promises to be helpful. Kifri tries to tell Agathe that it's not that simple because there are going to be lots of other people there who aren't witches, and she hasn't even taken the test to make sure she knows how to do spells in front of them without giving away magic secrets. But Agathe cuts him off and says she's been practicing on her own for ages, and it's his job as a mentor to find opportunities for her to get experience. Kifri knows that, though he still thinks it's a bit soon for him to take Agathe on a mission with him. Alrejo cuts in though, and tells Kifri that he's going to go ahead and follow the guy to the scene of the accident so he can set up a gate. He says he wants to bring Agathe along as his helper. This makes her really excited, and she runs off to go grab her hat and coat. Kifri is about to object, but then the other girls chime in saying that they want to go too, and Alrejo tells him that he needs to stop worrying so much, because there are things that the girls will never learn unless they get some real-life experience. Kifri knows this, but he's worried about them, especially Agathe, because she dwells more on the frustrations of the things she can't do rather than the things she can, and if she's not careful, her hurry to grow up might lead her to take the wrong step someday. Sometime later, Alrejo and Agathe go out on horseback to follow the man to the crash site. As they are on the way, Alrejo tells Agathe to be careful not to drop his things since the ground around here is quite unstable. They finally reach the location of the fallen bridge, and things are as bad as the man had said because the carriage is about to be carried off. The people are happy to see that the witches have finally arrived. Alrejo sets up his gate and checks out the situation. He gives Agathe some magic rings from his drying spell and sends her to help the people dry off. Agathe is a bit disappointed and asks if that's all he wants her to do because she was expecting more, but Alrejo reminds her that even the small tasks are important and that right now there isn't much for her to do here. There'll be plenty of better opportunities for her to apply herself in the future, but for now this is the best way for her to make herself useful. But Alrejo was merely stating the facts, while to Agathe it felt like he was treating her like an ignorant child, and she can't stand it because she has been working so hard to prove that she's a worthy witch, but she can't prove herself unless she is given the opportunity to do so. Once Alrejo finishes setting up the gate, Kifri and the others can come through. They immediately get to work. Alrejo flies down to the carriage to secure the children trapped inside, and Kifri flies ahead a little before taking out a magic sword and stabbing it into the river floor to stop the flow of water around the carriage. It's very impressive, But while the sword may be stopping the flow of water, Kifri still needs to put a fair amount of effort into keeping it centered against the flow of the current. So he tells Alrujo to hurry up with the evacuation. Alrujo gets the first pair of kids out without a hitch, so he goes back for the last one, and after getting him out, Kifri can finally draw the sword and slash the raging river, creating a wave break that slows the current down to relatively safe speeds. Thankfully everyone is okay, and the man who called for help is very relieved to see his son is okay. Custis apologizes for all the trouble he caused. He was just trying to protect Dagda's products. None of that matters to Dagda, as long as Custis is okay. Then he turns to Kifri and Alrujo and says thanks to both of them for their help. Kifri says it was no problem at all. He also mentions that his apprentices had brought some medicine with them, so if anyone here is wounded they'll be able to treat them, but then turns back to see that all the girls are over by the trees, staring in awe at Kifri's magic sword. Kifri explains it is called Rain Cleaver, and it has dozens of small water spells inscribed on its blade so it could easily split a small lake in two. Coco asks what it is. The girls think it's cool, and Tesha asks Kifri if she can hold it for a bit. He turns her down, and says this thing is way too dangerous for kids to hold, not until they've been trained up properly at least. In that moment Alrujo tells Kifri that he is going upstream to see if there is anyone in danger, and if there is, that Kifri will go downstream in order to see if there is anyone there, so he asks Tesha to come with him, and Alrujo takes Rikhe, while Coco and Agat are told to remain behind to help treat the injured. Coco is more than happy to do it, but Agat doesn't look too happy to be left alone with Coco. Coco can see that Agat is upset with her for some reason, and she figures it's because she still hasn't fixed and returned her flight shoes, so she makes a mental note to do so as soon as she can. The people have been busy trying to recover whatever cargo didn't get swept away in the flood, and Custis just made the absolutely idiotic move to climb into a gap created by the water in the cliffside to go retrieve a box he spotted down there, completely forgetting the fact that there's only a gap because the water eroded the cliffside, and that means it is incredibly unstable right now. But before Dagda could talk Custis into getting back up there, the inevitable happened and the cliff crumbled, dragging tons of debris right on top of Custis. What just happened has destroyed Dagda, who desperately tries to go down there to try to save Custis, but Agat stops him, because it's too dangerous. At that moment, Agat sees Coco's hat at the bottom of the ditch, and for a second she worries that Coco may have been buried alive in the landslip, but fortunately she managed to make it out onto the edge of the water. Custis, however, is not so lucky, because he has a large boulder crushing him, and Coco is not in any shape to help him at the moment. In this situation Dagda has no other options. He begs Agat to save Custis for she is his only hope. Agat considers the situation for a moment, and finds this as the ideal excuse to do something important for once. Kifri and Alrujo are both out at the moment, and she doesn't have her flight shoes on, so there is no way for her to go summon them. And the fact that Coco herself is in danger, along with Custis. So she has every reason to use magic in this situation. But when she agrees to help, people start gathering around asking how she is going to save Custis, and suddenly attention causes Agat's PTSD from being scrutinized by her former teachers to resurface. And what hurts the most is her mother basically banishing her from the family because she wasn't talented enough to meet her expectations. Just then the sound of Coco's voice calling out to her snaps Agat out of it. Coco asks if there's anything she can do from down there to help, because she really wants to save Custis. Coco's real concern for Custis makes Agat think of Alrujo's advice about not being too impatient. She has been looking at this as just an opportunity to prove herself, but this is a life or death situation, and her main concern should be to see the survival of Custis. She calls out to Coco and asks her for a full rundown of her current situation, and Coco explains that she's not injured and the current down here isn't life-threatening, so she's not in any immediate danger of getting swept away. She can't pull herself up because of the mud, so she is stuck here. Custis, however, is unconscious at the moment, and judging from the size of that boulder pinning him down, his leg must have been pulverized. But no grown-up would have the strength to lift it alone, so the only way to save Custis is with magic. But unfortunately, Coco's bag got soaked in the water, so all her drawing tools have been ruined. And Agat isn't allowed to let normal people see her draw spells, so she can't do anything with them standing here. Meanwhile at the Magic Tower Easties gets a report that an incident has occurred in a village on the outskirts of Kaun. They have to go right away. They say they saw a massive pillar of water from the river and it needs to be looked into eyewitnesses. Meanwhile, at the bottom of the cliff, Coco has finally managed to climb out of the water, but the bag is still wet, so there is not much she can do. At that moment she has an idea, and asks Agat if she still has the drying magic rings Alrujo gave her. Agat can tell what Coco is thinking. So she drops the rings down to her, and as soon as Coco has them she starts using them to dry out her bag so she can draw spells with it again. But even if Coco gets to use her tools again, she still can't draw any spells with all these people watching. Normally a witch is supposed to draw when there are people around by hiding their hands underneath their cloak so no one finds out how magic is cast, and while Agathe may be able to do it, Coco can't, so she needs to come up with a way to distract the people to buy her some time. Then Agathe gets behind the people and gains all of their attention, introducing herself as Kifri's most promising apprentice and promises that she will use her magic to make sure Custis makes it out of this alright. As she speaks, she pulls a light spell under her cloak, sending a bright pillar of light into the sky, forming a light bird. It's a beacon for Kifri and Alrajo and a distraction for the people, so they don't see Coco casting any spells. But down in the ditch, after drying her bag, Coco is about to start drawing the levitation spell she practiced. Then she realizes that there is no way this is going to work. It was one thing to cast the levitation spell on small objects, but if she wanted to cast levitation on a boulder this size, then her paper wasn't going to cut it. She begins to work her way around the boulder, looking to see if there is any way she can at least roll it off him instead. But then Custis comes to and Coco rushes over to check on him. Custis doesn't recognize her at first because he's still in a daze, so Coco reminds him that she's one of the witches that came to help with the flood. Custis was relieved to hear that because a moment ago he saw a glowing bird in the sky, and so he thought he was dead for sure. Coco says it was just one of her friend's spells, and seeing the spell gives her an idea on how to get Custis out of here. Meanwhile, back on the cliff, the people say her spell was very pretty, but it didn't really do anything to rescue Custis, and ask if she really has a plan to rescue him. Agathe doesn't really know what to answer, because she was just buying time for Coco to work, and Dagda is getting really impatient, so he says he's coming down to save Custis himself. Agathe tries to stop him as it would be a disaster if he saw Coco drawing a spell down there. Fortunately, Coco had already rescued Custis and floated back up to the surface. Everyone is glad Custis is alive, and Coco is just glad to be safe, so she hugs Agathe as soon as she sees her. Agathe asks her how she got Custis out of there, but she sees a bunch of sand on Coco's clothes, and Coco tells her that seeing Agathe's light bird reminded her of the dragon from that trap, and how they used the Wallbuster spell to make all that sand, so she just used that spell to destroy the boulder. In general, she's happy to have been able to save Custis, and she will save her mom someday too, no matter how long it takes. And for the first time, Agathe actually feels genuine respect for Coco. But then the two of them are suddenly tied up by a ribbon and pulled into the air. What the heck is going on? Coco doesn't have a clue what's going on, but Agathe recognizes the costumes of the witches holding them hostage as belonging to the Knights Morales, and if the Knights are here, they are in serious trouble. Agathe tries to tell them they are wrong, she is an apprentice witch and so is Coco, but the Knights immediately accuse them of being in league with the brimmed caps. Aestes, however, nods to the spell just cast. Coco's eyes widen as she looks down. She only remembers drawing a wall-breaking spell, but the whole side of the cliff has turned to sand, and the river itself vaporized. She has no idea how this could have happened, but the Knights say that obviously she must have used forbidden magic, and according to witch law, she will now be punished. Coco tries desperately to explain she didn't use any forbidden magic, but Aestes refuses to listen and gets ready to use the memory eraser's spell, but before he could, Rikhef flies in and grabs his arm and Tesha burns the ropes that are binding Agathe and Coco. But those ropes were also the only thing that was holding them in the air, so as soon as they're gone, they fall to the ground. Luckily Tesha had prepared her sand bed beforehand so they land softly, and the girls try to tell Aestes to just wait and listen, but he is dead set on erasing Coco's memories because he is convinced she must have used forbidden magic. But he falls silent when Kifri arrives, because the first thing he does is slam his water blade against his throat. Aestes and Kifri don't get along well, but Aestes knows how much of a threat Kifri can be when he's angry, especially when it comes to his students, so he's much more open to talking now. He said one of Kifri's students cast a spell strong enough to alter the ground itself, and spells like that have been outlawed since the Age of War. So if Coco actually cast a spell like that, then she definitely broke the law. Kifri says he never gave Coco any tools strong enough to create a spell of this nature, but Aestes says it's still possible one of the brimmed caps may have given it to her, and Kifri doesn't have an answer for that since there was a period of time that Coco was left alone with the brimmed caps. At that moment Alrajo shouts at the Knights and tells them to stop floating around and come down and lend a hand, because before anything else a witch's duty is to protect the general public, and there's a lot of people down here that need protecting right now. Aestes can't really argue with that logic, so he agrees to delay the trial until all the normal people here have been taken care of. The Knights go down and begin digging it all out of the sand, and one of the Knights helps bandage Custis' injured legs. Custis' father asks her if that is going to heal his son's injuries, but she tells him that all she can do is stop the bleeding for now. But he's not satisfied with that. He asks her if she can use magic to heal him, because he's seen witches regenerate objects before, so there shouldn't be a reason they can't do it for a person. And he is right, you can heal a person with magic, but she's not allowed to use magic like that out here. Let her go, she tells him. She's going to take Custis to the city of Kaun, to get him patched up by a doctor. If he doesn't like that, then she'll just have to leave him here. Custis' father realizes he has no choice and agrees to let her take Custis. They complete the rescue, and once the other civilians have been forced from the area, Estes says it's time they got back to the investigation, which makes Coco a little nervous. Estes gets Coco to redraw the spell she drew earlier using his own pen and ink. When Coco casts the spell, it does nothing but exactly what it was designed to do. It destroys a small portion of rock. Coco's technique with the spell was nothing particularly special either, so it's obvious she couldn't have created a spell powerful enough to have caused all this damage. Estes can't deny that for now there is no proof Coco is the one who cast the spell, but just to be sure, he makes her show him her hands because brim caps sometimes tattoo magic circles onto their bodies so they can amplify the effects of their spells, but Coco's hands are totally tattoo-free. The only thing there are calluses from all the spells she's been drawing, but every beginning mage has them. Actually, Estes thinks it's strange that Coco has so few calluses, because most starting mages develop calluses from years of study and training, but Coco's look like she's just started using magic a month ago. But just as he makes this realization, Kifri tells Estes that he's done quite enough, so he should be leaving soon, and Estes has no real grounds for continuing the investigation at this point. It doesn't look like Coco was the one who made that spell, so he agrees to leave, but he says he'll be opening a formal investigation into what happened here today, so it isn't over yet. Kifri lets out a sigh of relief when Estes and the other knights leave, because guys like him are always a pain. He says sorry to the girls, saying it all happened because he left them alone, but tells Agathe and Coco at the same time that they need to understand that what they did was really dangerous. If someone saw them using magic and learned the secrets of magic, then they had to erase that person's memory, and once you erase one guy's memory you have to erase the memory of everyone else who was there, and that's a whole mess waiting to happen. Coco and Agathe apologize and promise Kifri they will be more careful in the future, and Agathe has already accepted that she will probably not be allowed to take the advancement test anytime soon after this. But to her surprise, Kifri actually tells her he's going to arrange for the test to be set up for her once they get home. He believes it is a suitable reward as she did manage to get through the situation without revealing magic to any of the civilians. Tesha is a little jealous that only Agathe gets to take the test, but Kifri reminds her that she hasn't even finished the basics of hidden casting yet, so she's not as qualified as Agathe is. The same goes for Rick and Coco, who didn't even know that there was a second test. Alrujo asks Kifri if he's sure about it, because earlier today he was talking about how Agathe has a tendency to get ahead of herself, and that was indeed the case earlier, but Agathe didn't do that today. She let Coco handle it instead, and that's proof. Agathe then runs up to Kifri and asks him if they can leave right away so that she can get home and start practicing for her test as soon as possible, but Kifri says there's something they should do before they leave. Meanwhile, as the knights are flying away, one of them says that if it is really true that Kifri accepted an outsider as his disciple, the rumors that she used a forbidden spell may be true as well. But Estes says there's no real proof Coco was involved in that spell, or that she lived there for that matter, and there's no way they'd be to look for proof with that petrification spell encasing the whole house, so the only way they'll be able to punish her for that incident is if they can get her to admit to it herself. After all, if the brimmed caps really have gotten to her, then it's his job to see that she doesn't do any unfixable damage. Meanwhile, back at what's left of the river, Kifri and the others are watching Alrujo work on building a bridge out of the sand by carving a spell into the rock. Shortly after he is done, the water from the river begins to return, meaning the effects of the spell must have worn off, so there shouldn't be any more trouble. He notices Coco's bottle and hat buried in the sand, and he picks them up and hands them back over to Coco, reminding her that she should be careful not to lose her witch stuff because it would be a disaster if it ended up in the hands of a civilian. Coco thanks him for finding it for her, but when she looks at her ink, she sees that it still seems pretty much full even though she has been using it since she started learning magic. She thinks the jar must be some kind of magic that fills it back up over time, which Kifri is sure is not a spell on that thing, so he asks her to hand the jar to him, because something is very wrong with it. It appears that at some point the brimmed cap poured some of his blood into the ink bottle, which probably changed the effects of the ink, but Kifri has no way of knowing that the blood was added to the ink, so he plans to take it to Nalnoa and have it analyzed. He makes up an excuse, telling the others that he is going to stop by at Calhoun since they never really had a chance to get Coco a wand. Alrujo is a bit suspicious, but before he can ask Kifri the real reason for the trip, Kifri offers to pick up 2 bottles of wine for him, and Alrujo agrees to let him go after that. A little later, Coco and Kifri arrive at Nalnoa's shop in Kaun, but to Coco's surprise, there is no door here anymore. She wonders if they got the address wrong, but Kifri says that Nalnoa must just be closed for the day. That said, there's no way for them to get in if the shop is closed, but fortunately for them, Tarda happened to be returning from an errand at the time. Kifri tells him he came to see Nalnoa and Tarda agrees to let them in. Tarta reaches into his bag and pulls out a magic doorknob. The doorknob hits the wall, making a door into the shop, and when he goes in, he tells Kifri that Nalnoa should be on the top floor right now. Kifri begins to climb up and Coco is about to do the same when Tarta stops her and tells her that she has a cut on her leg and if she doesn't treat it soon it could get infected, so he asks her to come with him so he can tend to it. Coco thanked him for the offer and followed him into his room. She was surprised to see so many things she did not recognize. She picks up a jar of blue powder and asks Tarta what it is, because she thinks it's pretty. Tarta explains that those are magic dyes that change the effects of magic when added to ink, but asks her not to touch anything so she doesn't accidentally mix up the jars. Upstairs, meanwhile, Kifri finds Nalnoa trying to analyze the ink from that tile's spell, but he hasn't had much luck with it as the ink used with this is unlike anything he has ever seen before. He asks Kifri if he found any clues connected to it, and in fact, that's exactly why Kifri came, so he hands Nalnoa the jar of ink he got from Coco and after getting one look at it, Nalnoa immediately realizes that this is the same kind of ink that was used on the tiles. He can see by the blue tint the ink is. He asks Kifri where he got it. Then he realizes this is one of his own bottles of ink. That has him confused. Kifri thinks the ink must have been tampered with while Coco was left alone back in that trap and he wants to confirm his theory, so he takes the ink and prepares to use it to draw a basic light spell. Meanwhile, downstairs, Tarta is busy bandaging Coco's leg, and she's asking him about all the different magic dyes he has in here. He answers all her questions about the dyes, from how to make spells last longer to how to make the ink invisible. Coco is amazed that Tarta was able to memorize all of this. She says she'd love to live in a magic stationer's shop like he does, but Tarta doesn't understand why she'd say something like that. Being a witch apprentice at an atelier is 100 times better than being stuck here. Coco is a little confused because she thought Tarta was a witch apprentice as well, but that is a bit of a touchy subject for him because he has not been able to fulfill his dream. Then Coco spots a really pretty red powder on the top shelf, so she asks Tarta what it is, so he asks her to point at it so he can find it. Coco finds it strange she can't see the bright red jar, but she climbs on a ladder nearby to point at it properly. But suddenly, as she does, Kifri's light spell comes into effect, and it is much larger than usual, and it surprises the kids, and Coco falls over. They both wonder what could have caused such a blinding light, but more importantly Coco realizes she accidentally knocked over all the dyes. Fortunately none of them broke, and she offers to help Tarta put them all back in their place, but Tarta looks crushed, saying it is pointless. All the jars have their labels ripped off, and he can't tell them apart because he can't tell them apart by color like Nalnoa can. Coco is feeling terrible about what happened and asks if he is sure there is nothing she can do. Tarta solemnly asks her to leave it as it is, as there are some things he just can't do, and with his silver-washed eyes, he will never be able to become a proper witch like others. Upstairs, meanwhile, Kifri and Nalnoa are still feeling the effects of the magic light blast, and it doesn't make sense that a small spell would create such a powerful blast, so there must be something very wrong with that ink. Kifri figured the brimmed caps probably used a twin bottle spell, which is basically linking Coco's bottle to one of theirs, and that's how they managed to add whatever mystery additive made the spell so powerful. Nalnoa believes this is way too much for him to handle, so he believes they should contact the Great Hall right away. Kifri tells him they can't do that. This is the link to the brimmed caps he's been waiting for, and he needs to make sure no one knows he has it if he's going to catch them. Kifri begins to get nervous as he sounds a little unhinged, and apologizes to Nalnoa for what he is about to do. Then Kifri comes out of the store and sees Coco waiting outside. Silver-washed? What's that? It's a congenital disease, he tells her. You can only see in black and white. Witches tend to prefer good eyesight, you see. It's a rather difficult sickness to be a witch with. Later, inside, Tarta enters the magic dye room and finds Nalnoa rummaging through the mess. Tarta apologizes and says that he was startled by the flash of light earlier and accidentally knocked them over. Nalnoa doesn't know what he's talking about, however, because he remembers nothing about a flash of light at all. As far as Nalnoa is concerned, nothing unusual happened here. He keeps going with business as usual. Tarta knows he must have seen that blinding flash of light. It's odd that it all happened right after Kifri left the other day, so Tarta wonders if Kifri had something to do with it. Meanwhile, Kifri is having a great time with Coco and the others in a field. Coco keeps apologizing because she accidentally hit Kifri in the head with a tree branch. She was trying to cast a wind spell to shake some fruit from a tree, but her first attempt wasn't strong enough. She tried to make the spell bigger, but she overcorrected and ended up blowing the entire branch off the tree onto Kifri. Tesha suggests that Coco change the angle of the wind so it twists the fruit out instead of just pushing it. Kifri thinks that's a fantastic idea. He adds that adjusting spells to fit each situation is part of being a witch. Tesha says it's important to consider why the spell failed in the first place. Even if it works, you should think about why it worked too. Kifri agrees completely and tells Tesha she would make a great teacher. Tesha loves hearing that, but Agat chimes in, saying she's not in a position to teach anyone when she hasn't improved much herself. A little later, they all sit together and enjoy the fruit. Coco asks Kifri about the tests she heard about earlier. Apparently, there are more tests beyond the one she took at the data range, so she wants to know what they are. Rikha absolutely hates the tests. She doesn't think they matter at all. Kifri explains that the tests are meant to ensure a witch can handle real-world situations. Whether they are helpful depends on the person. He tells them there are 5 tests in total, with the one at the data range being the first. That test grants permission to become an apprentice. After that, the next step is to accompany your master on missions. The 3rd test allows you to enter the Tower of Tomes. Once you complete the 4th test, you are considered a full-fledged witch and don't need further training. The 5th test is for those who want to take on disciples. However, Kifri tells them they shouldn't worry about that one until they graduate first. Tesha is excited to become a full-fledged witch because she'll be able to travel the world, help people, and be thanked for her good deeds. Plus, she's looking forward to designing her own witch hat once she graduates. She plans to make it with 2 points to match her pigtails. Rikha, on the other hand, despises the idea of taking tests. She hates drawing spells she doesn't want to draw. A god reminds her that if she only draws what she likes, she won't learn anything new. But Rikha doesn't care. If advancing means doing things she doesn't want to, she'd rather not. She then goes back inside. After she leaves, Agat says Rikha might be fine with not advancing. She is prepared to take all the tests necessary because there are too many opportunities out of her reach right now. She wants to finish the tests quickly and hopes to become a librarian in the tower. Coco is surprised by Agat's goal. Tesha explains that Agat comes from a prominent family of witches descended from one of the apprentices of the 3 great wise ones. The head of the Arklom family traditionally becomes a librarian, which is likely why Agat wants that role. Tesha then asks Coco what she would like to become. Coco's journey is different from theirs. She doesn't have any ambitions besides wanting to undo her mistake, so she plans to focus on learning more spells for now. Later, Coco finds herself in a dark, empty space. She's frightened because she doesn't remember how she got there. Then she sees her mother in the distance. Overcome with grief, she runs over and starts apologizing for what happened. Suddenly, her mother's body turns to crystals and curses Coco for doing this to her. All of Coco's doubts about being a witch resurface and taunt her until she comes face to face with Igwin, who tells her that this is the result of her love for magic, and it's all her fault. Coco jolts awake in her bed and realizes it was just a nightmare, but she feels shaken and can't go back to sleep. Meanwhile, Kifri is walking through the house with ink he got from Coco, ready to investigate it. Just then, Agat comes up the stairs. Kifri quickly hides the ink to avoid raising her suspicions. He asks what she's doing up so late. Agat explains she wanted to practice a little more before bed. Kifri praises her work ethic but reminds her that everything must be done in moderation. She understands and agrees to go to bed. As she enters her room, she notices Coco at her work table and is surprised to see her awake at this hour. Coco says she has been having trouble sleeping. Agat doesn't pry further but notices Coco has been practicing her spells a lot. Right now, all Coco can think about is how many spells she has to learn before she can save her mother. Back to Kifri, he uses a spell to surround himself with a brick wall so no one walks in on him again. Once he ensures his privacy, he examines the ink bottle. He recalls when the 3 wise ones forbade casting spells on the body. The righteous healing witches opposed this rule because it would prevent them from helping people. They fought the 3 wise ones until the end. Eventually, when their memories were erased, their twin bottle spell was lost forever. This spell was useful because it allowed the contents of 2 different bottles to be shared, no matter where they were in the world. It made accessing medicine to help the sick easy. No one has been able to recreate that spell since, except for the brimmed caps. Kifri hates ruining such a beautiful spell but needs to dissect it to track down the brimmed caps. He doesn't plan to use the ink yet, as that would be too risky without knowing its contents. Instead, he decides to focus on the metal piece with the casting seal on it. This casting seal is linked to whoever drew the spell. If Kifri places it in a guidance orb, it will lead him right to the brimmed caps. He carefully reaches into the jar and grabs the casting seal with tweezers. Just as he's about to pull it out, a failsafe created by Igwin activates, unleashing a powerful blast of lightning. Kifri uses a rock spell to shield himself from the lightning but accidentally knocks the ink bottle away, triggering the second part of the failsafe. This creates a powerful water vortex that sucks Kifri in. As he gets tossed around in the vortex, Kifri realizes he messed up. He was so excited that he didn't consider the potential dangers, and he can't draw any spells in water, leaving him defenseless. To make matters worse, the bottle releases another bolt of lightning, shocking Kifri in the water. By the time the spell ends, Kifri gasps for air, his body numb from the shock. He looks up and sees Igwin, who just teleported here, floating above him as he rides around on the ground. Kifri tries to get up and fight, but his body is still too numb to move. Igwin casually reaches for the bottle and crushes it in his hand while Kifri is forced to watch. He desperately tries to grab Igwin. He refuses to give up until he reclaims what the brimmed cap stole from him. But before he can act, Igwin vanishes into thin air, taking Kifri's hope of tracking him down with him. Igwin reappears on a beach. He is disappointed that the gift he put so much effort into giving Coco was discovered so quickly, but there's nothing he can do now. He teleports away to prepare for his next plan. The next morning, both Kifri and Coco have been yawning nonstop. The others start to notice and ask if the two of them stayed up late for some reason. Coco admits she may have stayed up later than usual last night, but Agat points out it wasn't just last night. Coco has been staying up late to practice every night for the last few days. The others worry when they hear this because, as Alrejo always says, if you don't get proper sleep while you're young, you'll be short for the rest of your life. Tesha offers to brew some herbal tea for Coco to help her sleep. She also asks Kifri if he would like some, but he looks like he is already down for the count. The others wake him up, and Kifri apologizes for dozing off suddenly. He tells Tesha she can let him handle making the tea. However, as he grabs the pot, his hand slips, pouring hot water onto himself and causing him to drop the kettle. The others ask if he's alright. Kifri realizes he couldn't hold the kettle properly because his hand is still numb from the lightning last night. But he can't let the girls know that, so he tells them everything is fine and that he'll clean up the mess later. Right now, he is going to pick some herbs to brew a new pot of tea. The girls notice that Kifri is acting strangely today, but they assume his clumsiness is due to lack of sleep. While Kifri is gone, Coco asks Agat if she can come with her for a minute. She has something she wants to discuss, and Agat agrees to go along. Coco leads her upstairs and presents the silk shoes she fixed. She apologizes for taking so long but wanted to ensure the flight magic was balanced properly. Agat is surprised that Coco is giving these back to her. She suspects Coco is plotting something, as there's no way she can be this nice. Coco doesn't understand what Agat means, so Agat reminds her that even when Kifri scolded her for taking the test without his permission, Coco didn't snitch on her. Agat forced Coco to take the test, yet Coco chose not to reveal that. Now, Coco fixed Agat's shoes without being asked. Agat is curious about Coco's motives. Coco admits Agat is right. She could have snitched on her for forcing her to take the test. At first, that's what she wanted to do. When she reached the test site, she was alone and scared, unsure how to get back. She thought about waiting for Kifri to come get her. But she decided to try, wanting to prove to herself she could overcome problems with her magic. Agat is unsure how to respond. She feels incredibly guilty about what she did to Coco. Before she can offer a real apology, Coco suddenly falls to the ground with a severe fever. Kifri is in the garden, eating some medicinal herbs to help with his numbness when Agat flies up and knocks him off his feet. Surprised, Kifri regains his balance, then asks her why she was moving so fast. Agat explains that Coco must have made the flight spell too strong. But right now, Coco needs their help. Kifri and Agat rush back to the atelier. Coco's fever has worsened, so Kifri plans to take her to a hospital in Kelm. He asks Alrejo to watch over the atelier while he is gone. When Kifri arrives in Kelm, he bumps into Tarta. He asks if Tarta can lead him to the hospital because Coco needs immediate medical attention and he isn't familiar with the area. Tarta agrees to help, saying he knows a shortcut. He leads Kifri through a series of alleyways until they finally reach the clinic. Kifri hands Coco over to the doctor and thanks Tarta for his help. Tarta says he didn't do anything special, but Kifri insists Tarta must be very observant to have found a shortcut like that. Hearing such praise is meaningful to Tarta, so he feels grateful. While Kifri is here, he decides to ask a question that has been bothering him for a while. Kifri looks at Tarta with cold indifference for a moment. Then, he quickly switches to his cheerful personality because he thinks Tarta wants to ask him a question about magic. He loves explaining magic to people. After seeing how excited Kifri gets, Tarta hesitates to tell him he wasn't planning to ask about magic. Just then, the nurse comes out and tells both Kifri and Tarta that they can go in to see Coco now. Thankfully, after examining her, the nurse says Coco's condition isn't serious. It's just an exhaustion-induced fever. She also notices that Coco seems a bit sleep-deprived. She informs Kifri that if Coco gets proper rest, she should feel better in a few days. To be safe, the nurse believes it's best for Coco to spend the night here. Kifri thanks her for her help. The nurse tells him she doesn't know what kind of training witches go through, but it's an adult's responsibility to ensure kids don't overwork themselves, implying it's Kifri's fault. Kifri realizes she is right, so he apologizes to Coco. To make her stay more comfortable, he casts a quick spell to cool the room and help manage Coco's fever. Tarta wonders why Coco would work herself to the point of collapse. Kifri explains that while Coco may appear cheerful, she didn't know much about magic until recently. She must be desperate to catch up with her peers, which led her to neglect her well-being. Tarda remembers hearing rumors about an outsider who recently joined the magical world but never guessed that it was Coco. Kifri also apologizes to Tarda for earlier saying he had a question. He tells him they'll have to postpone that discussion for another time because now isn't a good moment for him. Tarda understands and assures Kifri there's no need to worry about it. Just then, the evening bell rings, prompting Tarda to tell Kifri it's time for him to head home. As he is leaving, he realizes he accidentally left his hat on the floor. Unfortunately for Tarda, this is a big issue. The ferry to the heart of the city only allows witches, and guards won't let him board unless he proves he is a witch by showing his hat, which he no longer has. If he wants to get home, he has to turn back and look for it. Meanwhile, back at the clinic, Kifri sits by Coco's bedside as the doctor returns to check on her. He tells Kifri that the mist spell he used is great because it makes the room cool. But Kifri insists it's nothing compared to what doctors do. Even with all the magic he can use, he can't cure diseases, so he can't help Coco, no matter how much he wants to. Still, the doctor reassures him that his magic helps keep Coco's fever in check, so it's useful. Meanwhile, on the northern side of town, a bar has caught fire, and someone rushes over to get the doctor because they need to treat the burn victims. When he arrives, he notices the magic bubbles next to Kifri. Realizing Kifri is a witch, he begs him to help put out the fire, as many people are still trapped inside. Kifri wants to help but hesitates to leave Coco alone. However, by this time, Coco has regained consciousness and heard everything. She tells Kifri she will be fine on her own and he doesn't need to worry about her. Since Coco is so insistent, Kifri agrees to leave with the others to help stop the fire. As they are leaving, Tarda finally returns to the clinic searching for his hat. He has checked everywhere else in town, so he's sure it must be here. Sure enough, as he walks back into Coco's room, he sees it on the floor. He goes to pick it up, but suddenly hears Coco moaning in her sleep. He checks on her. When Coco wakes up, she is surprised to see Tarta and asks what he's doing there, but then she coughs mid-sentence because she still feels sick. Tarta notices Coco's cold has worsened and wants to call for help, but he finds no one else in the clinic, which he thinks is odd. Coco explains that everyone went to deal with the fire up north, including Kifri, leaving just the two of them. It would take too long for Tarta to find someone else. Coco needs help now, so he decides to do what he can for her. He remembers that Tranquil-Leaf helps reduce fevers, and the doctor must have some around. He starts looking through the cabinets to find the medicine. Eventually, he finds a tray of medicine, but to his horror, none of the jars are labeled, which seems careless. More importantly, without labels, Tarta can't distinguish the herbs since he can't see their colors. He feels helpless in this situation. This brings back painful memories of his past when adults looked down on him because of his silver-wash eyes. They told him that without color vision, he would never learn to draw complex spells with magic dyes. They deemed it pointless to train him as a witch and told him to accept that there were things he could never do. The worst part is that Tarta actually knows about this. The components in magic dyes are often used as medicines, so he knows what the plants and herbs look like and what they can do. But when ground up, the only way to tell them apart is by their color. Coco, noticing Tarta is upset, tugs on his shirt and asks if he's okay. He apologizes for not being able to help her with the medicine. However, he still wants to make her comfortable. When she coughs again, he reaches into his bag and pulls out a vapor bubble to give her some water. As he does this, he remembers the vapor bubble works by drawing moisture from its surroundings, which gives him an idea. The Tranquil-Leaf is dried and ground into powder before being stored, so if Tarta uses the bubble to extract excess water from the medicines, he can distinguish them by their physical state. Tarta moves forward with his plan. He uses this method to rule out a few medicines, like the crystalline one and the oil-based one. Even after eliminating most, he is still left with 3 powders that look almost identical. He feels stuck and unsure of what to do next. Trying to guess would be too risky. Tarta feels like a complete failure because it seems there is nothing he can do. He gives up on figuring out the medicine and decides to wipe down Coco's sweat, since that is all he feels he can do right now. But Coco tells him not to think that way. She says that if you want to do something you otherwise can't, that's where magic comes in. She asks Tarta if he has any ink and a pen with him. As it turns out, he has a pen he recently carved, so he hands it over to her, and she begins to draw with it. She tries hard to stay focused, but she is still quite cold. Tarta wraps a blanket around her to keep her warm. He then asks what kind of spell she is drawing, thinking it will help her feel better. However, Coco says she doesn't know any spells like that. Instead, she is drawing a spell to help Tarta. This surprises him, making him even more curious about what the spell does. Coco explains she's modified a rock-breaking spell she knows. Normally, the spell turns solid objects into powders, but she switched the symbols so it should turn powders back into solid forms. She believes this will help Tarda identify the ingredients since he knows what the original forms look like. But when she activates the spell, the result looks all blobby and unrecognizable. Coco feels like a failure because she couldn't draw it correctly. The lines are wobbly and uneven, partly because she is sick, but that doesn't change the fact that her spell failed. Tarda asks her if it would work better if the lines were more precise. If so, he thinks he can help. Coco appreciates that. She watches him study the spell, and it reminds her of how cool he looked when she first saw him carving pens in Nalnoa's store. Tarda snaps her out of it and asks if he can move the symbols from the top and bottom to the sides. He thinks it would balance the spell and help the powder hold a more defined shape. Coco says he can make whatever changes he thinks are necessary because if he's the one drawing it, then it's his spell. After deciding on the details, Tarda begins to draw. A few minutes later, the spell is complete, so he decides to test it out. When he places a jar over it, the spell causes the powder to take the shape of the plant it originally came from. It's a complete success. Tarda is happier than ever because this is the first time he has achieved something like this. He quickly tries to find the tranquil leaf again, but to his surprise, none of the vials contain it. It's fortunate he didn't guess earlier. Confident there must be some around, he says he's going to check the storage room for the tranquil leaf. Normally, he wouldn't be able to tell these different medicines apart, but thanks to the spell he and Coco made, he can clearly distinguish them. It feels like a limit that has weighed him down all his life has finally been broken. He eventually finds the tranquil leaf, but suddenly, the nurse walks into the storage room and asks what he's doing, rummaging through the clinic's medicine. He explains the situation, and the nurse understands he wanted to help Coco and thought he was alone. However, she says no one would be careless enough to leave a hospital completely abandoned with a patient present. She also explains that the lack of labels on the medicine is to prevent people from administering treatment themselves since giving the wrong medicine can be dangerous. She admits that Tarda was right about tranquil leaf being the best choice and asks if he has an interest in medicine. Then she notices his hat and realizes he must be a witch's apprentice. By morning, Kifri finally returns. He has been worried about Coco all night, but he is relieved to see her sleeping peacefully with Tarda by her side. Later, Coco wakes up feeling much better, thanks to the medicine. She thanks Tarda for helping her last night, but he tells her she actually helped him. Nalnoa comes looking for Tarda since he didn't come home last night. He is relieved to see that Tarda is okay. With both Nalnoa and Kifri present, Tarda thinks it's the right time to ask about the light he saw the other day. However, Nalnoa still doesn't remember it, and Kifri pretends he doesn't know what Tarda is talking about, making him question if he imagined it. After that, Tarda and Nalnoa get on the ferry to go home. After Coco says goodbye, Tarda yells back that he will make his best magic pen for her as a thank you gift, and she says she can't wait to see it. Kifri and Coco start their journey home as well, and on the way, Coco explains to Kifri that she has been having trouble sleeping because of nightmares. Kifri isn't sure how to help with that since sleep spells are forbidden. But Coco reassures him not to worry because she doesn't think she will have nightmares anymore. She has found her ray of hope. The spell she made reminded her that spells are easily reversible if you flip the signs around. As long as she can find the spell in the picture book that crystallized her mother, she can undo it and save her. Meanwhile, the brimmed caps are planning their next encounter with Coco. They intend to strike when she undergoes a test since she will be outside Kifri's protection at that time.